Welcome to the Judges of Rathe podcast. Today we'll go through some highlights of the part the Mistveil release notes.
In this episode, Shay and myself are joined by a special guest, Patrick Jones from the Rules team, also known as Mick Lightning on a Discord near you. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into it?
Yeah, totally. My name is Patrick. I am from the Northern California area. I originally grew up in the Bay Area before moving north. I started playing card games with Magic in college, and then right around the transition period between Monarch and Tales of Aria is when I started playing Flesh and Blood, when a friend introduced it to me, and I just went totally head over heels for it. Became a judge pretty quickly after, as like kind of the only person in my area to be really, really into learning how things work and really liking to understand the nitty gritty of things. And I wanted to help my local community to run events and stuff.
Yeah, that's really great. And just a fun question for you. Your Discord profile picture is a very cute dog. Is that your dog?
Yes, that is my dog. If I remember correctly, we took that picture when my girlfriend and I were driving back home from our parents' houses in the Bay Area with her, and she was asleep in the back seat, like scrungled up is the only way I can describe the pose that she was in, and just passed out dead asleep. And I went, that's the picture that represents me.
Do you have the full-size picture?
I have it somewhere. I don't know
Okay.
exactly where it is, but I can find it.
When this episode drops, where you're going to have to post that in the judges' Discord. So
Oh, yeah. I will
better
find
start
it.
looking. Awesome. I see that dog everywhere because Patrick and I, we share a lot of different Discords. I just see that dog like 24/7. I bet you have like 3 keyboards like
I am
ongoing.
terminally online and everywhere.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that. Since we've kind of had this episode queued up with you, when I'm kind of jumping around the Discords, like the Enigma Discord, I've been seeing your name a lot of places lately. So you do seem very active.
As I said, I'm terminally online, and I'm not generally like a collector of things, but something about Flesh and Blood just sparked my like, I need everything. And so I want to play every hero. So I'm just kind of in conversations with people in basically every single hero thread in the purple Discord, kind of at all times.
Yeah.
And I'm also generally, if someone has a rules question somewhere, they'll just tag me. So I'm like, why? I don't play Brute. That's like the one class I haven't really touched a lot. And I'll be like, why do I have a tag in the KO thread?
Yeah.
What? Rules question. Gotcha.
Popular guy.
Apparently so.
All right. Well, let's get into these release notes and everything new about Part the Mistveil. We'll start with the new keywords, then the new heroes, then we'll highlight some cards that may trip people up. Just as a quick note, the comprehensive rules are being updated as of the time of recording this episode. In the near future, we will record another episode going through the updates, as well as some of the articles that have come out, including rules reprise, etc. So for now, we're just going to stick to the release notes. And as a second note, Patrick, you are really lucky because there has been quite a bit of chatter and discussion about this set, which is quite complex compared to Heavy Hitters, which is the previous one we went through. So we're going to capture a few iterations. We're going to use the most recent copy of the release notes, and we'll capture some errata with Patrick as well. So just a reminder, the episode will capture things as they stand at the time of recording, which is May 23rd, 2024. Hello from the future, if you are tuning in. So we ready to go into all of these?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go. So I'll kick us off here. We'll go through the new abilities. So the first one is Chi, and it's just Mystic Resource Chi as a subtype keyword. So the way that this works is that resource cards that have the subtype Chi can be pitched to gain Chi points, which can be used to pay for either Chi costs or regular resource costs. So, Patrick, I believe that this came up in a recent rules reprise, but it's pretty relevant for the way that we think about floating chi, floating resources as well. Could you just take us through maybe how we should think about how to treat floating chi, pitching, etc.?
Yeah, so the new nuance with chi is that it's being another resource that you generate by pitching a card, and there are things that care about pitching cheese and playing using cheese to pay for costs, and so it's a separate thing that has to be tracked. Um, it also, in addition to being a chi resource, is also just can be used to pay for any resource cost like a normal card could. It doesn't necessarily function any differently, except you have to be, when you have chi available, you have to spend that first. Whereas, so if you have, say, an excess chi floating from something and you would need to pay for a cost that was requiring you to pitch another card, you couldn't pitch the card and pay the resources from that and leave yourself the chi floating. You have to spend that chi first, which is kind of a something that's we've never had to worry about with only having just resources previously.
That makes sense, and certainly something else to keep track of. I just have a couple theoretical questions, maybe to really put you on the spot here. So let's say, for example, I have a floating chi and a floating resource. Let's say I pop my tunic or something. I'm in this situation, and then I play a card that has a cost of 1. Am I forced to use the floating chi first before I use the floating resource?
Yes, you are, as a rule, forced to spend that floating chi to pay for that cost. Even though you have a resource floating and you might strategically want to spend the resource and leave yourself a chi floating, you are forced to spend the chi first.
Interesting. So the player side of me, the gears are already turning in my head thinking about, yeah, when do I pitch the chi versus when do I play the cards that have resources. So yeah, this is very, very different from the way that we track resources. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense to me. Shay, can you think of any other weird interactions that come up here?
No, not yet. I haven't thought of any crazy ones yet myself.
No
I mean, at
worries.
least the nice thing, I mean, kind of jumping ahead slightly, the nice thing is that most of the cards that care about chi and require chi costs do cost 3 chi resources to activate. And most things that care about if you paid with chi cares about the act of pitching a chi card to play them instead of actually spending chi resources.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of future proofing is what it seems like.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Shay, I think you're up.
Yeah, the next ability we wanted to highlight was Transcend. And if a card transcends, it is put into its owner's hand, flipped, and you're considered to have transcended. A player can transcend multiple times in a game or even a turn. Now, currently, the only cards that are transcended are cards that have chi on the backside, but I think this could be left open for something else on the other side of the card. And is that correct?
Yeah, there's nothing inherently, I mean, not having access to the comprehensive rules update that actually details all of this, there's nothing inherently that would limit it to just be inner chi on the back side. It could be theoretically anything.
Yes.
One of the really interesting things about Transcend is how it functions as a double-faced card, mechanically different from every other double-faced card we've had previously, where as a rule, when a double-faced card goes from a one zone to another that's not the stack or the arena, it always flips back to its front face regardless of what face is active. And Chi is the first one where, you know, when you pitch it and then it goes to the bottom of your deck, you don't flip it back. It stays active on that backside until the game is over, which means it's really important to remember to de-chi your deck when the game is over so that you're not having a card pool error or presenting cards error.
Yeah. Excellent. I can't wait to get some presenting cards errors personally. I know Shay's going to really smack me with those. Yeah.
I'll be playing Enigma. I'll be flipping lots of chi. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Patrick, I think you're up.
Yep. So the next one we've got is Cloaked, which has the reminder text, equipped this face down. Cloak is an ability keyword, and it's a game rule that changes how permanents are equipped. So instead of normally equipping your equipment face up as you would with every other equipment, they're instead equipped face down in their appropriate zones. Unless otherwise stated, the abilities on those cards are non-functional and cannot be activated or triggered or used in any way while they're face down. So, for example, if a card has Ward on it and is equipped face down, that ward is not active unless it specifies this has ward while face down. If an equipment with the cloaked keyword remains equipped face down throughout the end of the game, the opponents or tournament staff or judges at the event may ask its owner to reveal what that face down equipment card is to verify, yes, that is an appropriate cloaked equipment for that zone. And if asked, owners must turn the equipment face up to allow the requesting party to validate it.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Which does have the really fun caveat of, now that we have equipment that by game rules can be face down in a zone, the shortcut of just turning destroyed equipment over is not something that we can do anymore, because now if someone walks by and you go, why do you have a random equipment face down? Is that cloaked? No, that's my Goliath gauntlet. Well, you can't cloak a Goliath gauntlet.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I'm guilty of taking that shortcut just for ease of gameplay and laziness, but it's certainly some muscle memory that I'm gonna have to relearn on my part. Guess Shay, you in the same boat here, or have you been diligent this whole time?
I've been slowly working towards it.
Yeah.
Not specifically because of Part the Mistveil and Cloaked, but just something I was trying to get into a habit of moving my equipment to the graveyard. But that leads me to a question now that it's going to have to be a thing. Previously, I've seen people put their equipment on the bottom of their graveyard just to keep stuff sorted, like slightly sorted, so their equipment's not in the way when you want to look through a graveyard. If and when your equipment is destroyed and it goes to the graveyard, something like Ward, does it then have to go on top of the graveyard where it is, or can you actually put it to the bottom to sort? I know it's sorting, and sorting's not allowed.
So I believe one of the latest rules reprises clarified that we are allowed to put them to the bottom, especially, I'm thinking of myself. I have mini snaps for my equipment.
Mhm.
Definitely would prefer those to be at the bottom and not smushing the rest of my cards.
Right.
Yep. Also, big
Okay.
shout out to all the Levia players out there. Have been practicing this skill forever, so big advantage to any Levia players. I think they can
Totally.
use any advantage they can get. Sorry, gameplay joke.
Shots fired.
I mean, Dusk Till Dawn came out.
All right. Shay, take us through the next one.
Sure. The next ability we have is Amp X, and that means the next time you would deal arcane damage this turn, instead deal that much plus X. Amp is another effect keyword, and Amp generates a replacement effect that applies to any one event of arcane damage that the player controls. This can include arcane damage events that are generated from actions, weapons such as Sergeant Aethertide, heroes such as Brainstorm, and anything else that might come up in the future. If an effect would deal 0 arcane damage, it is the same as no effect occurring, and therefore Amp does not apply to it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I know in the release notes they picked Kraken's Aether Vein, which is unplayable currently. So I thought I'd pick something that we could use.
Flexing your knowledge of the different wizard staffs
Sure.
that exist out there.
Yeah. I don't know, did you guys have anything to add to Amp?
Amp is created lots of weird questions. How does Amp interact with Fork Lightning, for example? Because that seems to be the card that Josh can never get away from causing a headache for him.
Yeah.
And the Fork Lightning one is a really fun one where if I remember correctly, the Back Alley Oracle that was put out when they changed it, it is 2 events, and thus amp only affects one of them, whereas the first impression was it affected both, and so a Forked Lightning for 2 and 2 would become 3 and 3, but it's actually now 2 separate events, so it becomes 3 and 2 instead of it getting to buff the whole thing.
That's interesting. I that card does cause a lot of headaches, and I do feel for Josh there with the recent changes. I'm just excited to goon someone for like a Kraken's for 4 and draw 4 cards. That's gonna happen.
Rest in peace, Kraken's Aether Vein.
You would draw so many cards, because if you played something like Kindles and you play them before each one resolves and you have no cards in your hand, and you could dump more cards, you could draw more cards, and it'd be ridiculous.
The best thing to do in a card game is drawing cards.
So I hear.
Absolutely. We're gonna move on to the cards in the set of Part the Mistveil, and I think we're gonna go in print order. So the first one is a doozy. I'm gonna read the card, and Patrick, you are going to have to explain every single line of this this text here to me. So I'll start by reading off the text of the card. It is Mistcloak Gully on one side and Inner Chi on the other. So it's a Mystic Instant landmark on one side and Mystic Resource Chi on the other. It costs 1 resource to play on one side, and on the other side it pitches for 3 resources. It's a legendary. The first attack that targets you each turn gets -1 power. At the beginning of each end phase, destroy this unless you've pitched, played, or defended with a blue card this turn. If you've pitched, played, and defended with a blue card this turn, transcend. So, bit of a mouthful, a little bit to think about here. So, the first one that I want to go through here as part of the release notes is the note here that says, when Mistcloak Gully's trigger resolves, whether you've pitched, played, or defended with a blue card is checked. If neither of these actions were performed by the controlling player that turn, Mistcloak Gully will be destroyed. And then if at least one was performed, then the trigger will look to see if all 3 were performed. If so, then you will transcend Mistcloak Gully into an Inner Chi and place it into your hand. So basically, what I'm getting from this is that there's a single trigger that checks, is it 1? Or is it at least 1? And then is it 3? But there's no priority, or separate trigger for that. Is that about right?
Yeah, correct. And there wouldn't be priority anyway because it's a beginning of end phase, which is one of the phases where players don't have priority anyway. But it is all one triggered ability that happens sequentially through the text of the trigger goes on the stack during the end phase, and then when it resolves, it asks, have you pitched, played, or defended with a blue card, which you could say you had a Bloodrot Pox token under your control and had not pitched a blue card, but had one in your hand still. You could layer the triggers such that Bloodrot Pox trigger is on the top of the stack with Mistcloak Gully beneath it, and you pitch your blue to pay for your Bloodrot Pox to prevent the damage. And then on the resolution of Mistcloak Gully's trigger, it'll say, hey, yep, totally, you did pitch a blue. Go you.
Right.
And then it'll continue on to say, hey, well, have you pitched, played, and defended with a blue card? And if so, then you get the transcend as well.
Got it. So you don't need to have pitched, played, or defended as your turn ends or as the turn ends and you go into the end phase. Like you described with the Bloodrot Pox, there is still a chance to achieve that depending on what happens at the start of end phase.
Yep,
Really
absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Then the next line on this release note says, in a multiplayer game, so this is the bane of my existence in a multiplayer game, if the first attack that targets you during a turn has its target changed due to an effect like Typanus, while you control a Mistcloak Gully, the attack against the new target will no longer have the -1 power applied to it. If during the same turn you become the target of another attack, the -1 power debuff will not be applied since it is no longer the first attack that targets you this turn. So this is a little bit challenging for me to wrap my head around. It seems like someone's getting scammed out of their -1 powers. So Patrick, I'm gonna turn it over to you to maybe help explain to me why it's like this.
The only thing that causes more of a headache in multiplayer is Yorick in multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, so when the target is redirected, in the case of, for example, Typanus, it was still initially targeting the player controlling the Mistcloak Gully. And so that no longer... So that's when Mistcloak Gully will apply. And then it's switched over, and the person who now who is being targeted by the effect, they don't have a Mistcloak Gully, supposedly. So now Mistcloak Gully says, well, you're not being targeted, so I'm not going to do anything to prevent the damage. Now, when you're then targeted again later, because Typanus is not a replacement effect, it's a triggered ability. It's not replacing the event from this is happening to this is not happening. So you were still targeted by an attack. And so this new attack targeting you is not the first attack to target you. It's the second attack to target you. Even though the attack never actually hit you, or you never made it to damage step or anything, it was still targeting you and existed as an attack targeting you.
Okay, this is beginning to make sense in my head. I think Shay, you good? You good over there?
Yeah, I am. I'm just thinking about it as we're going through it. That a little bit off topic. They're introducing more cards or effects that potentially change what is being an attack. I think we first started seeing this in something like Uzuri, where she would play a card with Dominate, and then when she would swap it out, the Dominate no longer exists. I'm starting to feel like I'm recognizing a pattern that if something changes within the attack, that the effects don't follow necessarily what's happening. Is that sort of like a general feel of what's happening here?
A little bit, yeah. Whereas instead of necessarily this being tied to an effect on the attack, it's more so tied to what is the attack doing.
Right.
A little bit.
So,
but I think that is the general principle that I would use to describe it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Just to pull on this thread a little bit, you mentioned Uzuri and swaps. And here, Patrick, I'm really going off script and putting you on the spot here, but Uzuri attacks you and you control Mistcloak Gully. Of course, the attack with stealth gets the -1, assuming it's the first attack. But then Uzuri swaps in. Does the -1 carry over to what got swapped in?
My understanding of it is, because I remember, I love the card database. What a fantastic tool. If I remember correctly, in the case of something like Pulverize, the effect does transfer. And reading the true text, their first attack, it's still the same attack, even though it's not the same card, is my understanding of it.
Interesting.
And because it's a continuous effect applied to the attack, it's something that's associated with the link itself, is my understanding of it. But I'm not 100% confident in that answer, because Uzuri and swaps make some things tricky.
So the next line in the release notes here is, during the end phase, if you control Mistcloak Gully that is owned by another player and you have played, pitched, and defended with a blue card this turn, then you transcend Mistcloak Gully. The player who controls Mistcloak Gully performs the transcend effect and is considered to have transcended. However, the inner chi is placed into its owner's hand. So I've stolen your Mistcloak Gully with some effect, and then I transcend it through fulfilling the conditions. I am considered to have transcended, but then the inner chi goes into its original owner's hand. Is that how that works?
Yes. So for the purpose of cards that care about you transcending, you will have transcended. However, cards that your opponents own and started the game with can never end up in zones like your hand or your pitch zone. So it has to go back to its owner's hand. That would, if it could go into your hand, that'd create some weird situations of like, well, my opponent is using different sleeves than I am. So now I have this marked card, and I also have potentially 81 cards in my card pool by some weird mechanism.
Yeah. And what if I then just concede and walk away with your Mistcloak Gully? That's my... yeah, I totally get that. Oh man, this is quite a block of text. Let's keep going. During the end phase, if you control Mistcloak Gully that is owned by another player, this again, and are reduced to 0 health, while Mistcloak Gully's trigger is still waiting to resolve on the stack, Mistcloak Gully is simply cleared. Before the next triggered layer on the stack begins to resolve, as if all players pass priority end phase, players that have no remaining health lose the game, clear all objects they control, and remove all objects they own from the game. This includes any unresolved triggered layers created by Mistcloak Gully, as they would be controlled by the player who lost. So
this
interesting.
is
Yeah, go ahead.
because of the what I like to call the anti-hostage rule for multiplayer. Say you were playing a game where for example, a new was able to steal an Enigma's Mistcloak Gully, and then the Enigma loses the game. The idea is that we don't want players to have to be held hostage and wait for the game to finish so they can get their cards back. They should be able to go, okay, I am dead. All of my stuff now is out of the game. So if you have my stuff, I can get it back, and I don't have to sit here and wait for this game to finish.
Yeah, that sounds like it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I'm really glad you explained that to me, because when I read this block of text initially, and then I read it again, I didn't fully understand the purpose of that ruling, but now it makes total sense. Yeah.
It was something that initially conversation came up around it with infiltrate from outsiders and frost hexes, and stealing your Icelander opponent's frost hexes and then playing it on someone else, and then the Icelander dying and going, well, my frost hexes are still in play, so I'm stuck here, I guess. And that just doesn't feel good.
No. Okay. Anything else about Mistcloak Gully? Let's move on.
There's so much text.
There's
There's so much going on.
A lot to unpack there. Rewind that bit a few times.
Mm-hmm. One of the other interesting things about Mistcloak Gully is that it's the only permanent in the set that can transcend. And so, because all of the other cards that transcend as a resolution effect transcend. And so this is the first one where it's something that sits there as a permanent in play and then goes back into its owner's hand when it transcends, which is kind of a cool, funky mechanical difference between how all of the other transcend cards in the set work.
Makes a lot of sense. Patrick, won't you lead us through the discussion of our next card?
All right, yeah, we have the first hero, New, Alluring Desire, and the young version, New, which is a Mystic Assassin hero and young Mystic Assassin hero, respectively. They have 4 intellect and 40 and 20 health, respectively. Their first ability is, your attacks with stealth get, when this chain link resolves, banish all action cards defending this, and it has an instant that costs 3 chi resources. It says, look at the top card of an opposing hero's deck. If it's blue, you may banish it. Until end of turn, you may play blue cards from that hero's banish zone without paying their resource cost. This is another source of that, taking your opponent's cards and doing stuff with them. One of the things about this is that it doesn't just, when the ability resolves, it doesn't lock the currently banished cards to be the only ones that you can play. It is every single blue card, even if it gets put there later. So you don't have to worry about banishing some number of cards, activating the ability, and then banishing some more later and going, well, darn, I really wanted to play this Terra Sunder, but I guess I can't. Because you totally can just play that Terra Sunder.
Yeah.
Because you're paying a resource, you don't have to pay the resource costs of it. That has the fun effect of, well, how do you deal with X-costed cards? And the way that's going to work is that you have to set X equal to 0. There's no shenanigans of, I would like to pay X's 1 million into a Sonata Phantasmia, for example, and just make a cajillion rune chance and make you discard a whole bunch of cards. You also are not truly skipping resource costs. So if you have a Frostbite or your opponent has a Channel Lake Frigid, you still have to pay any additional costs associated with the cards. If there was, for example, a blue Enlightened Strike, you'd still have to bottom a card from your hand to play it.
Right.
You don't get to skip every and all costs associated with it.
No, that makes sense.
Another thing is that you don't have to banish a blue card to the first part of her effect in order to play the cards. It doesn't say if you banish a blue card, you may play the cards. It says if it's blue, you may banish it, period. And then a whole separate statement saying until end of turn, you can play their blue cards.
Yeah, so you get to do both things no matter what, essentially.
And I see the final note here is about a multiplayer game. In a multiplayer game, if you are currently attacking with a blue card on the combat chain owned by another player, and that player is dealt lethal damage before the damage step of the active chain link, the combat chain will move to the close step. This is because, as a game rule, if the attack on the active chain link leaves the chain prior to the damage step starting the resolution step, the game will force the chain to move directly to the close step because there's no current attack on the chain link. This is why Phantasm closes the chain, for example, or an attacking Spectral Shield being destroyed closes the combat chain. And because it's an opponent's card, due to the no hostages rule, their card is removed from the combat chain. There's now no longer an attack, and so the chain is forced into the close step.
If I can just try to repeat that back to you to make sure that I get it, because I'm still a little bit confused. So we're playing a UPF game. I'm playing new. I'm attacking Shay with a card that he owns, and then he gets blasted by a wizard in the layer step. Let's say it happens a lot around here. We have a lot of wizard players. So the combat chain in that case moves directly to the close step. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So just like the case of Phantasm, where the changes to Phantasm's rules text are it no longer closes the chain by default as Phantasm resolving. Instead, there's no longer an object that is the attack that is on the combat chain, and the chain link has not resolved, so the game can't use last known information to preserve the identity of that and continue on, like with the case of Herald's going to Soul or Double Strike banishing itself and the combat chain not closing. Because you can't use last known information yet, the combat chain is forced to go to the close step.
Got it.
Which means you don't get to benefit from go again,
Yeah.
for example. So it's likely that your turn is ending.
That's a bit of a doozy. I think I understand. Shay, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that this game is designed around 2 players, and There's a lot of concessions being made for UPF.
Oh boy.
No, it's good. It's good. There's a lot again to go through here.
I can just see Grant was like this too on our last rules replies. Every time the word multiplayer comes up, like you get the biggest smile on your face. It's like it's a little weird. Like
it's one of those things that's multiplayer is really the evolutionary hotbed where all of the ridiculous interactions come out and we get to just go, oh yeah, and so then you have this piece here that interacts with this piece here, and then that ties into this, and we just get to go off on tangents because there's all the chaos associated with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just cooking. All right. Shay, rescue us from this madness.
Sure. We'll jump into something simple. Our first piece of equipment in Mask of Recurring Nightmares. It is a Mystic Assassin equipment headpiece. It has 2 defense and blade break, and it has the ability of once per turn attack reaction, spend 3 chi, and target defending hero banishes a card from their hand. If you attack an ally controlled by an opposing hero, you will not be able to activate this as there is no defending hero that you can target. And if you are attacking with an ally, you cannot activate this as you are not attacking the hero. I do have one question regarding this. If New is attacking and the opponent declares no defense, are they still a defending hero?
Yes. The point at which a hero becomes the defending hero is part of the chain link, and they don't stop being the defending hero just because they didn't defend.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, they stop being the defending hero somewhere in the link step. But I don't remember right off the top of my head. And of course, because I'm me, I have the CR open on monitor number 3.
No worries. No, it's always a good reminder. Not that I think it would be common for an assassin to have allies, but this was a pretty common rules question. Like, hey, can I pummel my dragon attack, or can I raise a reflex?
When the New banishes a blue Rake the Embers from a Dromai in Blitz, and then plays it to make an Ash and an Ashwing, now they have an ally. I don't know how they stole the Storm of Sandakai to attack with it, but
I think they're breadcrumbs for a little bit of future proofing, right? Like just leave out or add in some tidbits that could happen down the road, right?
Yeah.
To get used to the rules.
They're the defending hero until the combat chain closes.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'll take us to the next one, which is another piece of equipment, heirloom of Snakehide, Mystic Assassin equipment chest, 2 defense, battle worn, cloaked, and says while this is equipped face down, at the start of your turn, if you have exactly 1 health, you may turn this face up. So I think what we wanted to focus on here is that the triggered ability triggers and resolves at the beginning of the start phase. And during this phase, neither player has priority, and triggered layers cannot be responded to. And whether you have exactly 1 health is checked on the resolution of the trigger. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, so this, talking about cloaked, this is one of the examples of an ability that is active while it's face down because it explicitly says while this is equipped face down. And then the trigger condition for this is at the start of your turn. There is an if conditional in this, but Flesh and Blood doesn't use what's called an intervening if clause. So anything that's after that comma, where triggered abilities are broken up into a trigger condition, comma, and then a resolution effect, anything after that first comma is always part of the resolution of that triggered ability. So the condition of if you have exactly 1 health doesn't interact with whether the ability triggers or not. It will always trigger at the start of every single one of your turns. It just won't do anything unless you have 1 health on the resolution of said triggered ability. That's when you may turn it face up.
That that does make a lot of sense to me. Do you want to take us through the next one, Patrick?
Yeah, we've got our first deck card other than Mistcloak Gully. This is Gorgon's Gaze, a mystic assassin attack reaction. It is a yellow that costs 2 resources and has 3 defense. It says create a slither in your hand. Banish all defending attack action cards on the combat chain. If a chi was pitched to play this, you may banish you may play the banished cards this combat chain without paying their resource cost. So the thing with this is one of those chi matters cards. And so you have to have actively pitched a chi card to play this, not have spent one of your floating chi resources. For example, if you were to end up playing 2 of these by pitching a chi for the first one, and then with your last remaining chi floating, pitch a red or activate Tunic, you didn't actually pitch a chi to play the second Gorgon's Gaze, so it would not have that extra effect on it. You're also, when playing these banished cards, are still set to the same requirements of newsability of, well, if you have a frostbite or a channel like frigid, you still have to pay your taxes for those, and you can't arbitrarily set their X values to whatever you want. It's gonna have to be 0, unfortunately.
Yeah. It seems like after covering Mistcloak Gully, everything after that is like
easy mode.
pretty easy.
So much more simple. This card is so cool, though.
Yeah, let's talk about Siren's Call. It's a Mystic Assassin attack reaction. So it's red, costs 1 resource, and has 3 defense. And it says, look at defending hero's hand and choose a blue card. Add it to this chain link as a defending card. If you do, draw a card. So, couple things that we want to highlight about this. First of all, if you attack an ally, there is no defending hero, so you don't get to choose a blue card and add it to the chain link as a defending card. And this one, you may choose a blue card that does not have a defense property, such as a Heart of Fyendel or an Arknight Shard, for example, and add it onto the active chain link as a defending card. And I would just like to ask you, Patrick, what makes this different from something like Pulse Wave Harpoon, where I understand you're not allowed to choose something like a Heart of Fyendel?
Yeah, so the difference with Pulse Wave Harpoon is that Pulse Wave is specifically looking for action cards that have defense values that are less than the number of times you've boosted. So they are specifically looking at you're comparing a number to a property. And when you're comparing a number to a property, if the game can process the effect and continue on without demanding a value be returned from something that doesn't have that property, it just says, nope, I don't have that property. You can just ignore me. Whereas if it were the case where it had to have a value returned, for example, when Ravenous Rabble reveals a Gorganian Tome, the game stops if you don't return a value. You just get stuck in this blue screen state where nothing can progress. And so you have to return a 0. Because Pulse Wave can resolve and continue on, for example, if the defending hero had no cards in their hand, then there's no card that has defense less than the number of times you boosted if there's no cards left. So the game just says, whatever, don't worry about it, move on. The difference with Siren's Call is it doesn't say add a card that has the defense property. It just says add a card. Or sorry, excuse me, a blue card. Add a blue card. And so there's no requirement that it actually have the defense property. The thing that stops you from defending with a card without the defense property normally is that the defense set just doesn't let you. It says, nope, if it doesn't have the defense property, you can't defend with it here. And this is bypassing that by just saying it as a rule or as an effect resolves, it gets added to the chain as defending. When damage calculation happens, that's when the game will say, I need a value from you. And it'll go, okay, it's 0. I don't have it, so I have to tell you 0.
Got it. I can see this one being a little bit, or at least we'll have to answer quite a few questions about this, if this is a popular card, of course, because I don't know. Shay, I remember having to answer a lot of Pulse Wave questions
Yep,
when that
absolutely.
card came out, and we always gave the answer no. If it doesn't have the defense property, you can't pull it down with a Pulse Wave.
Yeah.
But now, I think I understand now with that explanation why they're different. But I think we'll just need to make sure that players are also aware of why they're different. Um, the last note that we wanted to highlight here for Siren's Call is you can't put the chosen card into the active chain link as a defending card if there's something like Dominate or Overpower that would prevent that card from defending. So, for example, if you're attacking with Overpower and your opponent has already blocked with action card, you can't pull down another action card. With Siren's Call, either to get them to block with it or to try to blow it up, because they can't. So I think that's pretty cool. It's actually one thing that my mind went to when I saw this card spoiled, because I had the whole thump pummel interaction in my head. So I was thinking, hey, I can really get some people with this, but not so much here.
In your example with the overpower, does it still stop a card with no defense value from being added to the as a defending card?
If it's an action, for the case of Overpower specifically, if it's an action card that
Right.
doesn't have the
Action.
defense property, it will still be stopped because it's still an action card. But if
Yep.
it was, for example, a non-action like a Heart of Findel or an Arcanite Shard, then it would, because it's not an action card, it would still be put onto the combat chain.
Perfect.
Notably, also, if you choose a blue card but are then prevented because of Dominate or Overpower, you don't get to draw a card, because drawing a card from the resolution of that effect is contingent on you adding the card as defending. And if you're
Right.
prevented, then you didn't add it as defending.
That makes sense. Okay. Shay, you want to take us through the next one?
Yeah, the next one is one of the 3 sacred art cards we might cover later. We'll see. But this one is Sacred Art Undercurrent Desires. It is a double face card with inner chi on the backside. It is a Mystic Assassin instant. It is a blue card, and it costs 3 resources. It does have the legendary keyword, so you can only have 1 Sacred Art Undercurrent Desires in a constructed deck. And it reads, if you've played another blue card this turn, choose 3. Otherwise, choose 1. And the abilities are create a Fang Strike and a Slither in your hand, banish up to 2 cards in an opposing graveyard, and the third one is Transcend. A couple things that we wanted to highlight here was that you choose the modes when you play this card, and to be able to choose 3 modes, you must have already played a blue card this turn before playing this card. You may not choose the same mode more than once, something like Art of War where you can't choose it more than once. And if you've played another blue card this turn, you must choose all 3 modes. Otherwise, you must choose one of the modes. If you choose the second mode, which is the banish 2 cards in an opposing hero's graveyard, you may choose not to banish any cards in an opponent's graveyard. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Did you guys have anything that you wanted to add?
Now, this is interesting to me because, like Art of War, you have to choose your modes when you play, like with any modal card. But here, there's an additional choice, or it's not really a choice. It's you either choose 3 or you choose 1. I imagine one question that we're going to get as, we've seen a lot of questions about the double transcend. Like, if I play 2 instants, like, do the instants see each other? But this one's a little bit different, right? Because not only do you have to play another blue card, let's say this one in an instant, but you have to choose 3 or choose 1 up front. So it's a little bit trickier in terms of how you have to order your cards if you're trying to do the double blue instant play with Sacred Art as one of your instants, right?
Yeah, this is one of the cards that I've seen a lot of discussion about when it was first revealed. And of course, because cards like Amulet of Haven Call exist, I think, despite me, and be corner cases, these are,
Yep.
talking about modes, I told someone, you always choose modes on play. And then someone went, well, Levels of Enlightenment exists and has modes on attack trigger. And I went, okay, all right. Every other card except for this one, you choose modes on play. So that's the thing that I've seen a lot being asked is, well, how can I play these? Do I have to play and resolve one and then play and resolve the other? Can I only ever get one to transcend? And this is going to be, I think, one that catches people out a lot, not necessarily remembering that modes are chosen on play for something like this.
Yeah. Just to be a little bit more clear, let's pretend that we have this Sacred Art card and we have just another blue instant. How would I have to play those two cards in order to get 3 modes on this card?
So you would either have to play. So if it was another one of the blue transcend instants, for example, and you wanted to transcend both cards and get all 3 modes, you would, when you had priority, play the non-Sacred Art card, and then once you're done playing it, you receive priority first again, and then you would have the opportunity to play the second your Sacred Art on top of it on the stack. And now that it sees, yes, you did indeed play another blue card, you can choose all 3 modes, go through its resolution, and then when the first one that you played resolves, it's a resolution effect to check, have you played another blue card this turn? And then it will resolve and go, yep, hey, look, there's that Sacred Art a little bit ago. That was a blue card, so I can transcend.
This is such a cool example of a lot of different concepts, between selecting your modes on play and, you know, what checks on resolution and what checks, like, what considers when another card is played. Like, this is such a cool example, like what you just described. This is like a lot of different judge concepts, like all in one neat little package. So I think it's a really cool interaction.
This set really has a lot of that.
Yep.
That's kind of like a rules understanding flex as you're playing, getting to sequence your game actions such that you're getting the most benefit, that where if you sequence them wrong, there's a tangible difference in the amount of value you're getting on a given turn, as opposed to sequencing it correctly, which I think is very interesting design for the cards.
All right. Let's move on. Shay.
Yeah, the next card is Tide Chakra. It is a mystic attack. Is a mystic attack reaction. It comes in the full cycle of red, yellow, and blue. It costs 1 resource to play. It is a 3 defense card. The text for the red one is target assassin or mystic attack action card gets +3. If you've transcended this turn, it gets +5. To note here, to get the additional power, you have to have transcended before Tide Chakra, its layer has resolved on the stack. And if you do, the targeted assassin or mystic attack action will get the +5 or +4, +3 for the cycle, instead of the +3, 2, or 1. Now, just kind of previous to what we were talking about, you correct me if I'm wrong, you can play the attack reaction Tide Chakra, and before it resolves, play a transcend card and resolve that, and then the Tide Chakra will resolve with the additional buff, right?
Correct, yeah, because for the most part, cards only do something when they resolve, and then in the case of something like an attack reaction, they then stop doing something and just are applying some effect that is locked into what it is. And so for Tide Chakra, it is, while it's waiting on the stack, it has all of the text on it. It has the target attack gets +3, if you transcend it gets +5, and then it only actually checks if you've transcended or not when it resolves, and then it makes that check, it resolves, it applies whatever power increase it's going to give, and then it stops checking from there on out. So you just have to, at any time before Tide Chakra resolves, in response to it, before you even get to the reaction step, whenever it is that you transcend, it just has to be before Tide Chakra resolves.
Mm-hmm. Man, like Prism players and Wizards have been practicing for this set for years.
And Levia players, don't forget.
Right.
How could we forget the Levia players?
That's true.
All right. The next card we want to talk about is Hiss. So it's a Mystic Assassin attack reaction and comes in the full cycle. Costs 1 resource and has 3 defense. And it reads, at red, target assassin or mystic attack action card gets +3 power. If you've pitched a blue card this turn, create a slither in your hand. So the release note here is you will create a slither in your hand if you've pitched a blue card by the time Hiss resolves on the stack, even if those pitch cards are no longer in the pitch zone. For example, Potion of Deja Vu. So makes sense. A little bit of memory involved here if you've pitched or not. So it's the only thing. Patrick, take us through the next one.
All right. Next, we've got Intimate Inducement. This is a Mystic Assassin attack reaction that has a full cycle of red, yellow, and blue, costs 0 resources, has 3 defense, and says target assassin or mystic attack action card gets +1 power. Look at the top in red 4 cards of the defending hero's deck and choose a card. If it's blue, it has 0 base defense. Put the chosen card onto the active chain link as a defending card and the rest on top in any order. And so, as with everything in the game, when the card starts to resolve, neither player is going to receive priority until the entire card is resolved. So you don't get to look at the cards in their hand and then choose a card and then play an instant maybe, or they can't show you their hand, play an instant out of it after they've chosen, so you can say, ha, no, it's not in there anymore. You have to finish resolving the entire effect, and then the turn player will regain priority again. If the number of cards that currently exist in the deck is less than the number of cards specified, then you will look at all of the remaining cards. So, for example, if you play a red and only have 3 cards left in their deck, you're still going to look at all 3 of them. And then same old thing with allies. If you play this while you're attacking as an ally, there's no defending hero, so there's no deck to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just maybe this is a bit of a sillier question, but in the event that the opponent only has 1 card left in deck or something, like, why doesn't the entire effect just fizzle? Like, you still resolve to the best of your ability, like to the extent that you can, if your opponent's deck doesn't have that many cards.
This is something that I saw in the notes that you had called out specifically, and off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure. I know that there's not, my reasoning off the top of my head is I can't think of a good reason why it would fail. It doesn't say look at exactly 4 cards, and it says look at the top, and so it doesn't necessarily, even if there's no cards in the deck, or if there's 1 card, there's still a top card.
Sure.
And so if memory serves, when you're looking at referencing a top card, there's a rule that says if there's less than that, you look at all of them instead.
Sure.
Is, I believe, the reasoning for that.
No, it makes sense. And intuitively, I don't think it should fail. I'm just, some players may think, like, is there a gotcha here? Am I going to get got if my opponent has, like, 2 cards left? Like, will it cause my entire attack reaction to fizzle on the stack or something like that? But sounds like that's not the case.
The next one is Fang Strike. It is a Mystic Assassin attack reaction. It's colorless or doesn't have pitch. It costs 0 to play, and it's ephemeral. And just as a reminder for what ephemeral is, it is this can't start the game in your deck. If this would be put into a graveyard, instead remove it from the game. And its effect is target attack action gets +1 power. To note here, Fang Strike is a card with ephemeral. It cannot be included in your card pool. But if it were to be put into your deck, something like bottoming it with an E-Strike, it can go there, and you can draw it at a later point in the game.
Bring extra sleeves.
Bring extra sleeves, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Pre-sleeve them.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Well,
this is something that it's another one of those cards that's printed at token rarity, but is not token typed, and so
Yes.
ephemeral handles the case of what happens when it goes a certain place, because ephemeral cards, as stated, totally can go in. They can end up in your deck somehow through Enlightened Strike as the example. There are effects that create certain ephemeral cards like Crouching Tigers into banished zones, and if they were token typed, they would be in the banished zone and then immediately cease to exist because tokens can't exist outside of the arena unless they're subcards. But because these are not token typed, they don't have to follow those same rules as token typed cards, despite having token rarity. Because token
Right.
is just one of those overloaded terms.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that, because I always forget that there is the two distinctions, and it is starting to become something that matters way more now. So it's a good thing to bring back.
Yeah, because there's token, legendary, legendary. There was a while where there was chain, and chain.
Right.
There's attack, and they all mean different things in different contexts.
Right.
I might have said one too many attacks.
we'll forgive you for that. All right, Patrick, take us into the next set of cards.
All right. Starting off, this is the hero that I'm the most excited about from this set. This is Enigma, Ledger of Ancestry, and her corresponding young hero, Enigma. She is a mystic illusionist hero, has 4 intellect and 40 and 20 health, respectively. With the hero abilities, your first Spectral Shield attack each turn costs 1 resource less to activate, and has a once per turn instant that costs 3 chi resources that creates a Spectral Shield token with a +1 power counter. So when you activate this ability, when it resolves, you create a Spectral Shield, and then it enters as a modification to how it enters with a +1 power counter on it. It's not a triggered ability that goes onto the stack and then you have to resolve. Effects that cause players' cards and tokens to lose and can't gain names. For example, the card that everyone loves to joke with me about, Amnesia, because I forgot what that card does, doesn't prevent Spectral Shield tokens from being created, because the create a thing is really saying create a thing that has these properties and this name. So it doesn't say create a Spectral Shield token. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to stop and not do that. It still goes, I'm going to create an illusionist aura that has word 1 and the name Spectral Shield, and then it just erases the name Spectral Shield for the turn.
Right.
So you can still resolve the effect. You'll still get a Spectral Shield counter, and you'll still get the +1 power counter on it. However, other effects that care about you creating or having Spectral Shield tokens will see this thing and go, nope, that is not a Spectral Shield. So, for example, something that would allow you to do an extra effect or play as though it were an instant if you control a Spectral Shield would not see you as controlling a Spectral Shield.
Yeah, that all makes very intuitive sense to me. Also very excited for Enigma too. I know Shay is as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Judges and illusionists.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just shocked that the illusionist hero is less complicated than any of the other heroes. So, well done. All right. Let's go into the next card here, Meridian Pathway. So it's a Mystic Illusionist equipment, legs, and it reads instant for 3 chi. You may play auras this turn as if they were instants. And whenever you pitch a chi, you may have this get ward 3 until end of turn. So a few things that we wanted to highlight here as part of the release notes. So first of all, if you have multiple ward 3s, I know this was a source of confusion back in Uprising when it first came out. Doesn't matter how many wards that you stack on this, if you happen to have, pitch 3 chis in a single turn, it has ward 3 times. Only the first instance is relevant, essentially. You don't get to take advantage of multiple instances of ward on a single permanent like Meridian Pathway. So that's one thing that I can foresee getting some questions on, because it's potentially a thing that you could pitch multiple cheese in a turn and have the opportunity to stack up multiple wards. Another thing is that on your turn, you may choose to play auras um, as though they were actions, or you can choose to play as they are instants. Note that the activated ability on Meridian Pathway says you may play auras this turn as if they were instants, not that your auras this turn are played as instants. So if you have extra action points to burn and you really want to style on your opponent, I can't think of any other time you'd want to do this. You have that ability. I think those are the biggest things that stood out to me. I guess just the last things, whenever you do pitch a chi with controlling Meridian Pathway, then a trigger is created for each chi that you pitched. So if you pitch 2 chis to pay for the cost of a card, then you generate 2 different layers, 1 each, to get you those lovely multiple instances of ward. Anything to add?
This may be jumping a little bit ahead, but with the other Enigma and her caring about equipment with ward, because you equip your equipment face down and they essentially have cloaked, this doesn't have ward while it's face down, and the triggered ability never triggers while it's face down because it doesn't specify that it's active face down.
Yeah. That does make sense.
All right. Next up, we've got the Heirloom of Rabbit Hide. This is a Mystic Illusionist chest equipment that has cloaked and says, while this is equipped face down, at the start of your turn, if you have exactly 1 health, you may turn this face up, and it has ward 4. So this is the same gist as the other cloaked equipment, where it has an effect that is active while face down because it says that it's active while face down, and it triggers at the start of your turn every single turn, but then you can only have the option to turn it face up while you have exactly 1 health when that triggered ability resolves. While it's face down, it has ward, but the ward isn't active because it's not face up. And it doesn't say, while this is face down, this has ward 4.
Next up is Truths Retold. It's a Mystic Illusionist Equipment head. It has the keyword cloaked, and it has an ability of instant for 1 resource. Turn this face up. Put an aura from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck, and it has ward 1. What we wanted to highlight here was turning this card up is part of the cost of activating this ability. If you cannot turn this card face up because it is already face up in the arena, you are unable to have activated again. When Truths Retold activated ability resolves, you choose which aura from your graveyard that you will put on the bottom of your deck. If your deck zone is empty when this is activated and the ability resolves, you will put 1 aura from your graveyard into your deck zone. That card would be the top of your deck at that point. Note that you are not targeting an aura, so you choose on resolution, and you can only apply the prevention effect from this card's ward ability to a damage event as long as this card is face up, like we've mentioned before.
Excellent. The next card that we want to talk about is Uphold Tradition. So it's Mystic Illusionist Equipment Arms. It has cloaked, and it says instant for 1 resource, turn this face up, put a +1 power counter on aura you control with ward. So the only thing that we wanted to highlight on this one as being different than the last card that we covered is that auras with ward, you also control them if they're on the stack. So for example, if you have 1 on the stack waiting to resolve, let's say that you played an action aura that has ward, then you can as an instant turn it face up and put a +1 power counter on it. And just like before, there's no target of an aura, so you can choose on resolution. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and that does actually matter if you only control in the arena 1 aura, and then you're dealt damage, say, by a wizard, and you are forced to use the ward to prevent the damage. Well, you still control the aura that you have on the stack, so you don't totally lose out on the utility, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's really cool. The next card that we want to cover is Manifestation of Miragai. So it's a Mystic Illusionist instant aura. So it's a blue that costs 3 resources and says this enters the arena with 2+1 power counters. If a chi was pitched to play this, instead this enters the arena with 4+1 power counters. And it has ward X, where X is the number of +1 power counters on this. So just couple things just to rehash the previous clarification that you have to have actively pitched a chi to play this. You can't have like floating chi from a previous thing that you paid for. Another thing is that the ward ability is continuously checking. So if you were to add a +1 power counter to Manifestation of Miragai as an instant, for example, with the Uphold Tradition that we just talked about, then it would update the ward X amount continuously. The last thing that sticks out to me is if somehow it doesn't have any +1 power counters on it, then it still has ward 0, which means that it would still be destroyed if you were dealt any damage. So just because it has ward 0 doesn't mean it dies immediately or it's protected from being destroyed if you deal damage. It just means that it doesn't prevent any damage but still pops when you do take damage. I think those are the big things that stick out for me. Anything else about Manifestation of Miragai?
I just think this card is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
pretty
excited
neat.
for this card.
It's the questions that I see a lot about this are around, well, how much does it attack for? It has 4 counters, so it has ward 4, so it hits for 4. No, it hits for 8.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So just to reiterate, if for some reason Manifestations has no counters on it, it's ward 0, it still exists in the arena until I take damage, but if I could apply new +1 counters to it somehow, then it would update its ward, correct?
Yep.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Patrick, go for the next one.
Yep. So now we've got another one of the sacred arts. This is Sacred Art Immortal Lunar Shrine, which also is a double face card that has inner chi on the backside. It is a Mystic Illusionist instant. It's a blue that costs 3 resources, has the legendary keyword, has if you've played another blue card this turn, choose 3, otherwise choose 1. With the 3 modes, create 2 Spectral Shield tokens, put a +1 power counter on each aura with ward you control, and transcend. So one of the cool thing about this is that if you have all 3 modes active by playing another blue card previous to playing this, then you create the 2 Spectral Shield tokens, and you have those Spectral Shield tokens by the time the second mode resolves, because you resolve cards sequentially as the way that they're written. And so you would get the double dip, quote unquote, benefit of creating Spectral Shield tokens and putting +1 power counters on them, in addition to any other auras with ward that you control. And if you play this in response to playing another blue aura, for example, to turn on all of the modes, it's on the stack. So as we stated, you control that still. So it would also get a +1 power counter.
This is super cool. Like, just, yeah.
All right. Yeah, the next one we have is 3 visits. It is a Mystic Illusionist instant aura. It is red and costs 3 to play it. And it has the text Ward X, where X is 3 times the number of blue cards you've pitched this turn. So the keynotes here is that 3 visits ward ability is continuously checking to see how many blue cards you've pitched this turn. Even if those pitched cards are no longer in the pitch zone, something like Potion of Deja Vu. Also, if you control 2 or more prevention effects and both would apply to an event of damage, you may decide which of those prevention effects to apply first. If the first prevention effect would result in you pitching a blue card to pay for a resource cost, something like arcane damage, Then 3 visits ward ability changes to 3 times the number of blue cards you've pitched this turn before it would apply itself to the damage event. So again, it'll be constantly updating as long as you're ordering the prevention effects.
Yeah.
Which is super cool.
Yeah. Next one, Shay.
Oh yeah, that's me. We got another chakra here, Moon Chakra. It is a Mystic Illusionist instant. Comes in the cycle of red, yellow, and blue. Costs 0 to play. And it reads, the next time you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent 3 if it's red of that damage. And if you've transcended this turn, instead prevent 5. So kind of like the Mystic Assassin attack reaction. It's constantly checking before the resolution of this card. And if you have transcended by the time this card resolves, then it'll get the updated prevention.
The big one that we want to highlight here is that it is the next single time you would be dealt damage.
Right.
So if there's any leftover quote unquote prevention amount, it's lost, and you know, it's not like it carries over like a Oldham react, for example. This is only for the next single time you would be dealt damage.
Yeah, the difference being something that would float the prevention over would say the next X damage you're dealt. That doesn't care about how many instances of damage it is. That's just, it looks for a total amount of damage that it can prevent, and then will continue preventing until it's done that. Whereas this saying the next time is specifically saying the next instance is all I'm going to look at and all I'm going to prevent.
Right.
Notably, one thing is that if you have other prevention effects that you would take damage and then the damage is replaced to 0, you are no longer being dealt damage. So this effect will say, well, I haven't been dealt damage yet, so I'm going to still stick around and look. So, for example, a wizard can't cheese you by activating Waning Moon when you have enough resources and Arcane Barrier to prevent the Waning Moon, so they can try and sneak a Aether Wildfire through, for example. Yeah. You can pay for Arcane Barrier, and then Waning Moon didn't deal any damage to you. So your Moon Chakra is still waiting to prevent the next damage.
Right.
Makes
These distinctions are really important and cool.
All right. The next card we want to cover is Waning Vengeance. It's Mystic Illusionist instant aura. Comes in the full cycle, costs 1 resource, and it reads, when this leaves the arena, if you've pitched a blue card this turn, create a Spectral Shield token, and it has ward 3 at red. So the thing that we wanted to highlight here that sticks out to me is that it is a trigger, and it triggers when it leaves the arena, for example, when it's destroyed. And whether you've pitched a blue card this turn is checked on resolution. So this is a little bit tricky because, yeah, the ward is a replacement effect. Let's say during the combat, if you're being attacked, let's say, and the ward prevents some of that damage, it's a replacement step, and then the trigger goes on the stack in resolution. So there's just a little bit of timing that you have to be aware of. The other thing that we want to highlight here is that if the card is destroyed as part of applying its ward prevention effect to a damage event, basically you don't lose the Spectral Shield right away. You've already taken the damage. Then this trigger goes on the stack. Then if you satisfy the condition of having pitched a blue card this turn, you create the Spectral Shield, but at that point you've already taken the damage. So it's not like your shield blows up right away. So just a little bit of timing that you have to think through when resolving this. But to me, intuitively, it makes sense. I don't know if there's anything to add there.
If you had 2 Waning Vengeances leave the arena at the same time, would you get 2 Spectral Shields?
Yep, because the condition is just if you've pitched a blue card this turn. The interaction that's really important with this is something like whack card, I believe, is waxing something.
So yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of as waxing. Waxing Spectre.
Yes, waxing Spectre. Nope, that's the enters the arena. It's I can
Still
picture
learning
the
new
art.
cards.
I can picture the art of the card. It's something that I'm absolutely playing. Let me just find my Enigma deck because it's in there. Haunting
Yeah.
Spectre is what I'm thinking of. Where Haunting Spectre says, when this leaves the arena, create a Spectral Shield token. Then if you control no other illusionist auras, put a +1 power counter on it. So if you were to stack the triggers correctly, you could have Haunting, because if they're both destroyed by the same event and have their triggers on the stack at the same time, you as the controlling player would get to order them.
Right.
And so if you order it so that Haunting Spectres resolves first, it creates a Spectral Shield. You don't have any other illusionist auras, so it gets the counter. And then you have Waning Vengeance's resolve, and it just says, is there a blue card that you pitched this turn? Yes or no? Yes. All right, here's a Spectral Shield. But if you do it in the reverse order, you're going to lose out on that +1 power counter from Haunting Spectre. And next, we've got the last of the draftable set heroes in the set. The Mystic Ninja, Zen, Tamer of Purpose, and his young counterpart, Zen. They are a 4 intellect and 40 and 20 health respective heroes. Zen has a once per turn instant ability that costs 3 chi and says, create a crouching tiger in your hand. Search your deck for a card with combo, banish it, then shuffle. You may play it this turn. So whenever you activate this ability, you have to search your deck. You don't have to find a card with combo, even if there are cards with combo in your deck, because they're private objects while in your deck. You can fail to find them. However, regardless of if you find one or not, you always have to shuffle your deck on the resolution of this activating.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because sometimes even I get questions from, let's say, a new player that's playing Katsu and says, well, I want to fail to find, but I also don't want to shuffle. Can I do that? And no, if you're going to go through the steps, like, you have to shuffle. Shay.
Yep. I hope I don't butcher this one, but the next card we have is the 12-petal Kasaya. It is a Mystic Ninja Equipment chest. It has 2 defense and it is Blade Break. And it reads, whenever you transcend, you may gain 1 resource, so the red one. And it has instant pitch 3 chi, destroy this, create a Zen state token. And the note here is that the 12-petal Kasaya will trigger whenever you resolve a transcend effect on another card. When this trigger resolves, you may choose to gain a resource.
And you can transcend multiple times in a single turn, as we've talked about earlier. So it could, there's no limit. It's not a once per turn.
Yeah.
So you can gain multiple resources as well.
Another thing to note about this is that you don't get to double dip on the defense and the Zen state token on the exact same attack, because while it's defending, it has to be there on the chain defending when the damage step happens to actually defend against an attack. And if you destroy it before the damage step to create a Zen state token, it's destroyed, so it's in the graveyard and no longer on the combat chain. So you're not getting that 2 defense, you're only having the prevention effect of the Zen state.
That's a really good clarification. Yeah.
That is, yeah.
So I've seen in spectating some friends playing Talishar games, I've seen a lot of Zens block with 12 petal, then blow it up, and then hit undo, and blow it up and hit undo, and blow it up and hit undo, and not quite understand why they don't have 2 defense on the chain anymore.
And that makes a lot of sense. And just for additional clarification, you can still block with the 12-petal Kasaya, take advantage of the 2 defense on the card, and then after you take whatever remaining damage, then you can destroy it, create the Zen state. You just don't get the benefit of the Zen state for that link.
Yep, much like being able to block with Balance of Justice on a Blood Rush turn and then blow it up after damage, so you get to draw a card to defend the next attack with. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay, the next card we want to talk about is Tooth and Claw. It's a Mystic Ninja attack action. It's red, costs 0 resources, 4 power, 3 defense. And it says when this attacks, you may reveal any number of crouching tigers from your hand. If you reveal 1 or more, this gets go again. 2 or more, this gets +1 power. 3 or more, draw a card. So, a couple things we want to note here. It triggers when it resolves on the stack and becomes attacking. So this is an optional triggered effect, and you may decide to reveal any number of crouching tigers from your hand when the triggered effect begins to resolve. So the big thing that comes to mind here is that during the layer step, if you have certain instance or something you can do to create crouching tigers, you're certainly free to do so. You have a window there before Tooth and Claw becomes attacking. The other thing is that if you resolve this trigger and then reveal any number of crouching tigers from resolving a different effect later on the chain, for example, or later on in this link, it does not cause Tooth and Claw to generate additional effects from this triggered ability. So you get one chance to reveal when this card becomes attacking, and then you're locked in. It's not constantly checking.
My only thing to say about this card is I think it's wild that Zen got a playable Phoenix form before Fi did.
Yep. All right. Let's go, Patrick.
All right. Next up, we've got Shifting Winds of the Mystic Beast. This is a Mystic Ninja action card. It's a blue. It costs 1 resource and has 3 defense. Whenever you play a Crouching Tiger this turn, name a card. It gets that name. If a Chi was pitched to play this, create 2 Crouching Tigers in your hand. Go again. So you can't just name any old card. For example, you can't name Go Bananas unless you're playing a format where Go Bananas is legal. Mm-hmm. The Crouching Tiger you played that causes effect to trigger will get the name in addition to its original name. So you're not overwriting Crouching Tiger. It is still a Crouching Tiger. One of the things is this only if you're hit by an effect that says that cards lose names, then they can still gain names, and this would still cause it to apply a new name on top of it. But if it says lose and can't gain, then you're out of luck, and you would pick a name, it would get applied, that immediately fall off at the same time. There's some fun stuff you can do with this, like naming your tigers Life of the Party, naming them Crazy Brew, and then playing Life of the Party and destroying Crouching Tigers from previous chain links, because you control the Crouching Tigers because they're on the chain, which is in the arena. And so because their chain links have resolved, destroying them and causing them to leave the chain doesn't close the chain. So you can play your Life of the Party for free by destroying your Crouching Tigers that are named Crazy Brew.
That is absolutely wild.
Very much like a Grant example.
No, this is Grant and Patrick now. You get to join the Hall of Fame.
Joining the ranks of Grant.
He was the person who brought this up first in the rules team chat, I think, because it's a Grant thing to do.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's too funny.
Just one funny thing about these name cards, like I always get questions like, hey, is it legal for me to name like an arbitrary name like Banana Split or whatever, like and it's really helpful just to know that it does have to be a card that is legal in the format that we're playing. I mean, normally my response if I'm just having a fun time with my friends is just name it Surging Strike, please. Like, please just make my life easy. But that's good.
I think a common kind of joke, the last tiger, if you have some big combo turn, you can name your tiger Already Dead.
Nice. I like it.
All right, sure.
The flex. All right, the next card we're going to look at is Waves of Aquamarine. It is Mystic Equipment Arms. It has 1 defense. It has the keyword Cloaked, which it enters the has Cloaked. You equip this face down, and it has the ability of attack reaction. Pay 1 resource, turn this face up, and target attack gets +1 power. And at the start of your turn, destroy this. The note here is that this card can be activated in the reaction step of your turn as long as you are the attacking hero. And like previously mentioned before, you can't use this on allies because there is no attack reaction step.
Yeah. With
We're slowly losing our voices. I don't know how Patrick is staying alive, but I can tell that at this point both Felix and I are struggling, and we still got a little bit to go, so bear with us.
Yeah. No, thanks. And just with a lot of players maybe trying Enigma or Illusionist for the first time and also having draftable Mystic equipment with an attack reaction on it, I suspect that this will be a fairly common beginner's misplay, just to try to use this attack reaction on an attack with Enigma with a ward, right? Or no?
Well, those are weapons
shoot.
from Cosmo. Causes them to be
You're
weapons.
right.
They're not allies.
There's no allies.
So,
yeah.
mhm.
I am. Okay.
Yeah.
133.
No, I got you.
Thank
Felix.
you.
I'll cut that.
However, something to note to kind of harp on again is that it's a cost to turn it face up.
Yep.
So you can't activate it for, pitching 6 resources into it if it's already face up. Right. The headpiece, I think, is the one that was the most fun to explain to people. No, you can't do that because it says its resolution effect is draw a card. And if you could do that as many times as you had resources, you could draw your entire deck in one turn and pitch your entire deck in one turn, and then have your deck perfectly stacked for turn 2, which is a ridiculous thing to think would be possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty handy.
Mystic Melody, anyone?
All right. Let's cover the next cards here. So there's a cycle of equipment here. I'll just call out the headpiece, Skycrest Keikoi, which is a mystic equipment head. And it's cloaked, and it says instant destroy this. Prevent the next 1 damage that'll be dealt to you this turn. Activate this ability only while this is face down. This card can be activated during the action phase of either player's turn. So basically what we want to highlight here is that this is the exception to what we were talking about earlier, that most activated abilities or keywords, etc., were not active while your cloaked equipment was face down. This one explicitly says activate this ability only while this is face down, which permits you to do so. That's the biggest thing there.
Another thing to point out is that if there were something that caused it to be turned over, it's no longer face down, so you can no longer activate its ability because it specifically says only while this is face down.
Got it.
So a little bit of future proofing, putting it in people's heads of maybe one day we'll get hey, take a look and flip this over. Because I believe the only effects we have currently are you can look at a cloaked card, but not actually flip it over.
Right.
Thanks.
Next, we've got Attune with Cosmic Vibrations. This is a Mystic attack action card. It's a blue that costs 0 resources and has 2 power and 2 defense. It says, when this attacks a hero or defends a hero's attack, reveal the top card of their deck. If the revealed card is blue, this gets +3 power and +3 defense. So what we want to point out here is that when this card's triggered effect resolves, you will reveal the top card of the hero's deck. Neither player is going to receive priority until the entire triggered effect has resolved, including gaining +3 power and +3 defense if the card revealed as a blue is fully done resolving. If there are no cards in the deck zone, or there's an effect like Channel the Bleak Expanse that prevents you from revealing cards, then you're not considered to have revealed the card, and so you're not able to generate the effect of gaining +3 power and +3 defense.
Excellent. Move on to the next card here, Cosmic Awakening, which is a mystic action attack. It's a blue, costs 9 resources. It has an asterisk. It has a star for power and 3 defense. If 1 chi was pitched to play this, Cosmic Awakening's power is 10. If 2 were pitched to play this, then Cosmic Awakening's power is 15. And if 3 or more chi were pitched to play this, Cosmic Awakening's power is 20. So the big thing that we want to highlight here is that if, for example, there's something like a clash or another effect that requires the power value, of the Cosmic Awakening that has not yet been played, then the base power value is 0. It's the biggest
Being
thing.
a property static property, it gets a little weird sometimes. It's one of the big things is by pitching 1, 2, or 3 chi, you're not actually modifying the base power of the card in any way, because the base power of the card is whatever the property static value is currently being evaluated at. So by pitching 1 chi into it, the base power is 10. So something like a Riptide Trap that's looking for increase in power is not going to see this 10 power as above base power. It'll see it just as base power.
No, makes sense.
All right, next we've got a card I alluded to earlier, Levels of Enlightenment. This is a Mystic attack action card. It's a blue, costs 1 resource, has 3 power and 3 defense. That says, when this attacks, choose 1 for each blue card you've pitched this turn, and has the modes, draw a card, this gets +2 power, and this gets go again. And so this is the one exception to my modes are always chosen on play. This is when the triggered ability goes onto the stack during the attack step, before you gain priority, you have to declare your modes by putting the ability on the stack, much like the Coaxa Commotion hit trigger. And you choose 1 mode for each of the blue cards that you've pitched. You can't select the same mode multiple times because it doesn't say that you can select it multiple times. And any any blue cards that you're pitching during the layer step, for example, maybe you're paying for this card with the blue, or you want to play a Sacred Art in response to this, or not in response to the trigger because it's modal, but in response to playing the card, will count towards the number of blues that you pitched once the attack trigger goes on the stack and you're picking your modes.
No, this is absolutely fascinating. Like, I can see this being a judge exam all-star, like, moving forward, because it is so unique, having to choose modes at an unusual time in the combat chain. So yeah, this is just very cool.
All right, the next card we have is Dense Blue Mist. It is a Mystic instant. It comes in the color blue, costs 1 resource to play it, and it reads, attacks that target you this turn get -1 power. As well as, if a chi was pitched to play this, effects don't trigger if an attack hits you this turn. And the note here is that this prevents any effects that would trigger if an attack hits, including on hits and on damage effects. What it doesn't prevent from triggering is if the attack deals damage in other ways, in steps that other than damage steps. Something like wager, it wouldn't stop.
Yeah, I mean, Shay, you're a Riptide player, and you have the trap that stops the similar stuff, right? So
yep,
all over this.
Yeah, we've seen this effect before.
Yep, this is also a card where I can confidently say that this will apply to an Azuri swap, because the card swapping in is taking all of the attributes of the chain link as far as targeting goes, so the attack is still targeting you,
right,
and will still have -1 power.
Right. I think that makes sense because it says attacks that target you as opposed to target attack.
Yeah,
I think is what would feel natural.
And it's very much like This Round's on Me, but the Mystic instant version.
Right.
Okay. We'll move on to the next card, which is Orihan of Mystic Tenets. It's the Mystic instant. It's a blue, costs 4 resources, legendary, and it says, draw 2 cards. If a chi was pitched to play this, instead draw 3 cards. So I guess the kind of a funny note here, but I think it's important to note that you cannot choose to draw only 2 cards if you pitched a chi to play this. It says instead, so it doesn't say you may. So it is decided for you.
And if the options are draw some cards and draw more than some cards, I mean, come on.
But
sometimes I play Prism for a reason.
You may want to only draw 2.
Maybe. Doubtful, but maybe.
I can think of like exactly one situation, and that's it when you're deep into pitch stack and need to know that you're going to draw a specific set of cards at a certain
Yeah.
time, but
Yeah,
only if you draw 2 cards here.
that's right. All right. Next one, Patrick.
All right, next we've got Second Tenant of Chi Moon. This is a mystic attack action card. Comes in blue. Costs 3 resources and has 5 power and 3 defense. It says if you've transcended this turn, this gets, when this chain link resolves, draw a card. So this is a triggered ability. Or sorry, if it gets the triggered ability before the resolution step, because this doesn't say when this attacks if you've transcended, when you play this if you've transcended. It is a static ability that's constantly checking if you have transcended. So if you meet that condition anytime before the resolution step, then this ability will trigger, and the controller will get to draw a card from the ability's triggered effect when it resolves in the resolution step. But if it gets the triggered ability after the resolution step starts, then you've already passed beyond the when this chain link resolves event, so you're not going to be able to get to draw a card.
Oh, makes sense. There's a whole cycle of cards like this that say if you've transcended this turn, this gets some text. So just for the sake of brevity here, we're only highlighting this one. So we'll go into the next card here, which is a drop in the ocean on one side and inner chi on the other side. So a drop in the ocean is a mystic instant. It's a blue with 0 resources, or that costs 0 resources. It's legendary, and it says target attack gets -1 power. If you've played another blue card this turn, transcend. So this is the first in, again, another cycle of instants that have inner chi on the other side. And basically, we've touched on this a few times, but this card will transcend into inner chi if you've played another blue card other than this one before this card resolves. So again, you have the opportunity to play one of these, hold priority, and with this still on the stack, play another instant that's blue, and then have both transcend. I think that's the main thing that we want to cover about this cycle. Something that's very specific to this one is that if the attack source of the active chain link is the targeted attack, and then somehow by the time this card's layer resolved, that source is no longer on the combat chain, then this spell or this card fizzles. The layer fails as there's no remaining targets, and this card does not transcend. So pretty cool, could be relevant with some of the ward attacks out there. I don't know, Patrick, anything weird or funny about this card or this cycle?
I mean, it's another one that you can target your own attacks if you want to, if you need the chi for something, and then a wizard can come along and go, well, that's a spectral shield, so I'm gonna blast you. So now you're gonna have to use your spectral shield to prevent the damage, so it's gonna get destroyed. So the chain's going to close, your card's going to fail to resolve, you're going to lose your action point, everything's going to be bad.
Sounds terrible.
That's Wizards.
All right. I think this next one is pretty fun, Patrick, so it's all yours.
This is the Assassin card, Bonds of Agony. It is an Assassin attack action card. It is a blue, costs 0 resources, has 1 power and 3 defense. It has stealth, which does nothing. If you've played or activated 3 or more attack reactions this chain link, this gets +3 power, and when this hits a hero, look at their hand and choose a card. Search their deck, hand, and graveyard, and banish up to 3 cards with the same name as the chosen cards. They shuffle. So this card is a little crazy. There's a lot going on with it. So notably, if your opponent doesn't have any cards in hand, then there's nothing that you can choose. However, you still search their deck, because it doesn't say if you do choose a card, search their deck. So you still get to, regardless, as long as you've met the condition of playing or activating 3 or more attack reactions as chain link, ruin someone's pitch stack if it hits. You can't banish any if you're not choosing a card from their hand, but you're still messing up their pitch stack. You're still getting to look through everything that they have left. And if an effect would trigger from banishing a card, for example, contract from a previous attack on the chain, it would trigger for each card that you're banishing because you're the one banishing the cards from them. So if you were to play a Leave No Witnesses and then give it go again, and then play this, somehow play or activate 3 attack reactions on that chain link, and then go and banish 3 red cards from them, you're going to get the 3 silver from the Leave No Witnesses.
Yeah, this is pretty nutty. I think this is the first card printed that has this capability to search your opponent's deck. Yeah, and it's pretty cool that, yeah, because you get to search your opponent's deck, you can still fail to find, but you get information on all the deck cards that they have, which, yeah, it's pretty cool. First one that I can recall for sure.
Yeah, it's also nice to highlight that the rest of the text on the card isn't conditional on whether or not your opponent had a hand or not. So that wasn't something I was even thinking about, but that's good to know.
Yeah, this card is messed up.
It seems pretty good.
I mean, there's a couple other really fun ones, Patrick. I've assigned you a few in a row here.
Yep.
So let's keep this one going.
Yeah, totally. Next, we've got Persuasive Prognosis. It's another assassin attack action card with stealth. It's a blue that costs 0, has 1 power and 3 defense, and says, when this hits a hero, banish the top card of their deck, then look at their hand and banish a card with the same color as the banished card. Whenever this banishes an action card, gain 1 health. And so banishing a card from resolving a different card's banish effect will not trigger this card's whenever this banishes, because something else banishing something is not Persuasive Prognosis banishing. It specifically cares about Persuasive Prognosis, that Persuasive Prognosis being the thing that banishes. Now, notably, this does interact favorably with New and her hero ability, because her hero ability gives the effect that banishes defending action cards to the stealth attack itself. And so if you were to banish an action card from New's ability from on Persuasive Prognosis, that will gain you a life.
Super interesting. And really good reminder that New gives the ability to banish a defending action card to the action. Yeah. Okay. Probably the most fun card in the set from a rules discussion perspective, Patrick.
Yes.
Coming up here.
Should I read the errata version or the as printed version?
Let's go with the latest version, please.
Okay. So this next card is Bonds of Attraction. The most current up-to-date printing of this card says Stealth. It is an assassin attack action card that has a full cycle red, yellow, and blue. It costs 0 resources. The red has 3 power. They all have 3 defense. And it says, when this hits a hero, banish the top card of their deck, then banish a card from their graveyard. Whenever this banishes a card, and this has banished another card with the same color, gain 1 life. So, this card has been all over the place because the as printed version is slightly different and uses a slightly different trigger condition for the second ability. So, the intention, and the errata has aligned the card text with this intention, is that the first card it banishes can never gain you a life, because the condition is intended to be when it banishes and checking for the same color, all as one trigger. So whenever this banishes a card, it's also going to look for, has this banished another card with the same color? If it does, then Bonds of Attraction will trigger. So if you were to banish, say, 2 blues from your opponent, the first one that's banished from banishing the top card of their deck will not cause Bonds of Attraction to trigger because it's only banished 1 card. and then you banish a blue from their graveyard, Bonds of Attraction will trigger because it will see that you banished a blue card previously and meet the trigger condition of banishing a card and banishing another card with the same color from this effect.
Yeah, the errata version makes sense to me. The pre-errata version or the as printed version did make sense why it could gain you 2 life. Because no intervening if and all of that. But man, like that was so unintuitive to explain to people that were not judges. Even within the judge community, a lot of different questions. So it's unfortunate that it's that there's an errata, but I am happy that we got to, at least to me, what is the more intuitive interpretation. I do have one question, and just going back to what we were saying about new, like how does new's ability interact with the text on this card that says whenever this banishes a card? Like, would you potentially have the ability to gain even more life from new's ability?
The most you could, so in the event in a vacuum where the only effects banishing cards from a Bonds of Attraction chain link are the hit effect of Bonds of Attraction and news effect that it's granting to Bonds of Attraction, the most you can gain is 2 life, because you'll be banishing 3 cards, and the first card that's banished can never trigger the gain a life trigger because it doesn't have any other cards to look at previously to compare the color to. Whereas the second and third that are banished, regardless of what effect it's from, the second and third will be able to look back at the first and second respectively to see, hey, what were those colors? Do they match mine?
Got it.
You know you're dealing with judges when they can't just say yes or a number.
The amount of times I have to answer questions with yes, hit enter, but hit enter again, and then spend 5 minutes typing.
Yeah, that's funny. The next card that we wanted to cover is Bonds of Memory, and it's exactly the same thing as everything that Patrick just described, other than it cares for the name instead of the color.
And this has gone through a similar printed in one with one syntax on it, and then realizing the intention doesn't match what the syntax on the card is and what text of the card is, and received an errata, so it has the same exact trigger condition, just it's the same text as Bonds of Attraction, just replacing color from Bonds of Attraction with name on Bonds of Memory.
Yep, that makes sense. Since I got an easy one there, I'm gonna take the next one. It is Cosmo Scroll of Ancestral Tapestry. It is an illusionist weapon, scroll, 2-handed, and it reads, during your turn, auras you control with ward are weapons with base power equal to their ward and have once per turn action, spend 1 resource, attack. Your auras with 1 or more +1 power counter get go again. So what we wanted to highlight here is that your illusionist auras are considered to be weapons during your turn only, not just during your action phase, as with something like Iris of Reality or Luminaris. Nor all the time as with Reality Refractor. Cosmo has a static effect. If you attack with an aura with ward and then give it 1 or more +1 power counters, that aura's attack gets go again. So somewhere in like the reaction step, you can give the ward +1 and you'll get go again as sort of like a combat trick, right?
Yeah. It is fascinating how a lot of the different illusionist weapons make their auras into weapons for different amounts of time. It's just a little bit confusing just to think that certain weapons, certain auras become weapons, sometimes all the time, sometimes only during your action phase, sometimes also during your start and end phase.
I'm curious if that's like, or when that will come into play, those timing windows. It's certainly an interesting.
It does if you play Cosmo Prism and play Glisten. because Glisten says at the start of your end phase, remove all +1 counters
Yep.
from weapons you control. And so with Iris and Luminaris, you go to the end of your turn. Well, you're not in your action phase, so your auras are no longer weapons, so you don't have any weapons to remove +1 power counters from. However, with this, because it's your entire turn, that includes the end of turn phase. So if you were to play Glisten in a Cosmo Prism deck, you'd go to the end of your turn, your auras with Ward would still be weapons, and you will end up removing all of those counters.
I think my hopes and dreams have just been crushed.
You have just blown my mind, actually. That's
And I was thinking about
relevant.
Cosmo Prism, but I hadn't sat down and actually paid attention to it. And yeah, that's obviously really important.
Yeah, I saw someone in the Purple Discord today talking about some crazy OTK Prism deck that they had theorized, and then someone went, okay, but they're weapons during the end of turn, so Glisten doesn't work.
Glisten doesn't
And
stick
they went,
around,
well, the
yeah.
whole thing's dead.
Truth.
Oh, man. All right. Next one, Patrick.
Alrighty, next up we've got Essence of Ancestry Body. This is an illusionist action that is an aura. The red costs 0 and defends for 3, and says, when this leaves the arena, if you control no illusionist auras, the next time you be dealt damage by a red source this turn, prevent it. And it has Ward 2. And if I memory serves, this does come in a full cycle of yellow and blue, where the change is that the color that it prevents from is associated with the color of the card itself. And so this is another one of those cards where the condition of if you control no illusionist auras is only checked on the resolution of the trigger, because Flesh and Blood doesn't have an intervening if. The trigger condition is just when this leaves the arena. And then when it resolves, if you have multiple of these when this leaves the arena triggers, and some of them create auras, then if you stack them all correctly, you can have this resolve before creating or playing any other auras. And then you have this floating prevention source. This isn't one of the ones where it says the next time, you're dealt damage, it'll check, is it red, and apply regardless. It will only apply to a red source, which is any card dealing damage that is a red and has a red strip at the top of its card. The example that we've got is if an opponent plays and resolves a yellow Electrify, then hits you with a red Snatch. If the prevention effect is generated before Electrify's trigger resolves, then you would prevent the damage from Electrify because it's granting an ability to a red card, because it says that the Snatch is the thing that deals that extra damage, not Electrify itself.
Right.
Yeah, that's quite a layering of on damage, on hit effects there.
Yeah, and this is another one of those similar ones, like Waning Vengeance, I believe it was, where if you're dealt damage by something and that you apply the ward from this too, the prevention effect that's generated to prevent damage from a red source won't be generated until after that damage event is done, so you can't double dip on it like that.
Yeah. Makes sense. Shay, next one's yours.
Yeah, we have Haunting Spectre. It is an illusionist action aura. It comes in the full cycle. It costs 2 resources to play. It has a 2 defense value, and it reads, when this leaves the arena, create a spectral shield token. Then, if you control no other illusionist auras, put a +1 counter on it. And what we wanted to highlight here was that if you do not create a spectral shield token, something like Ripple Away, as part of resolving this card's effect, but you do control only one other illusionist token named Spectral Shield, you do not put the +1 counter on that Spectral Shield. Can you elaborate a little bit more as to why it works like that, Patrick?
Yeah, because the effect says if you control no other illusionist auras, put a +1 counter on it, referencing the Spectral Shield that is created from that triggered ability, instead of saying put a +1 power counter on a Spectral Shield token you control.
Okay. Right, yeah, okay. I understand.
Makes sense. Yeah, this is part of a bigger cycle of cards that if you control no other illusionist stores when this leaves the arena. But this one I think is the most complicated and illustrates the rest. We'll go into our next card here, Territorial Domain. It's a ninja defense reaction. It's a blue, 0 resource cost, 2 defense. It says while this is defending, if you've created a Crouching Tiger this turn, this gets +3 defense. So just a quick one here. Effects that cause your cards and tokens to lose and not gain names, like Amnesia. They don't prevent Crouching Tigers from being created when resolving effects on other cards, which is really interesting. And actually, Patrick, I maybe throw this to you, like, just to go back to your previous explanations on Amnesia, could you just remind us about why it works like this?
Yeah. So when you create tokens, the effects that create them don't fail because they don't have a name. It still remembers what to create. It's a list of properties that it's going to reference and say, create an object that has these properties and this name. And you are still the game still sees you have created a Crouching Tiger, even though by creating it, it loses its name.
Okay. So if you were under the effects of Amnesia, and then you play this Territorial Domain defense reaction and somehow also create a Crouching Tiger on the turn when you're under Amnesia, you still get the power boost for creating a Crouching Tiger, even though those tigers don't have names.
Yes, defense boost, not power boost.
Thank you. Yep.
And notably, this is another one of those cards that's an exception to things, because normally defense reactions only do a thing when they resolve. Something like Sink Below is a resolution effect of Sink Below. Sigil of Suffering that gains +1 defense if you've dealt arcane damage this turn is not a static effect that's constantly checking. Whereas this, because it specifically says while this is defending, it is constantly looking at have you created a Crouching Tiger this turn at all points in time, instead of just the moment that it resolves.
Very interesting. Okay, Shay, next one.
Yeah, the next one we have is Prismatic Leyline. It's a generic action in yellow. It costs 0 to play. And it reads, your next red attack this turn gets +1 power. Your yellow attack gets +2. And your next blue gets +3. Go again. It also defends for 3. The highlight here is that these effects apply to your next attack of each color, red, yellow, and blue. This turn, it can apply to weapon attacks, something like if you're attacking with a yellow aura or a blue aura, as well as ally attacks if the card face has the correct color strip, or obviously in an attack action card will also get buffed. Seems kind of self-explanatory. I don't know if there's any corner cases other than like something like the weapons and the allies that would have colors. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
It didn't come intuitively to me that like a yellow aura was still considered a yellow attack, but of course it makes sense. It's just one of those things that made me think. That's all.
Yeah, you don't think about it, until it's kind of brought to your attention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's, off the top of my head, I don't recall any allies that currently have an active face with a color strip on it, because every ally is either Ashwings and tokens that don't have color strips, or the invocations for Dromai that flip over to the dragon side that doesn't have a color strip, the angels for Prism that flip over, and I think that's it.
Yeah.
The
demons
tokens, yeah.
And sellswords tokens.
There's more allies than I thought.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Next card here is Battlefront Bastion. It's a generic action attack. Comes in a cycle. At red, it has 7 power, and it costs 3, and it has 2 defense, and says when this defends alone, prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to you this turn. So, big things I want to highlight here is that this will trigger when this defends alone. if it is added to the chain link as either the only defending card, or if it's added by itself to the chain link by something like Pulse Wave Harpoon pulling it down into the chain link by itself. In the event of something like Pulse Wave Harpoon making it defend, then it will trigger even if there are other cards already defending, because it's still defending alone. I think one thing that's a little bit unintuitive is, to me at least, is if there's the cards in a multiplayer game, and there's cards with Protect on them, you could attempt to defend alone with Battlefront Bastion, but then some jerk could just add a card with Protect to the defense, and then you're not going to get the trigger anymore. So again, that's something Shay would do, I'm pretty sure.
UPF jank, baby. I love it.
Yeah, that's right. Those are the big things that that come to mind here. I don't know, Patrick, is there anything else that jumps out at you?
I mean, just the simple reminder of defending alone is an event. It's a single thing. It doesn't matter if something else defends later. So this doesn't. You can get the prevention effect trigger and then also play a defense reaction.
Yeah,
because as long as the Battlefront Bastion is added alone to the chain link, that's all it's looking for. It's not looking backwards or forwards at what else is happening for defending cards. It's just looking at right now, is my defend event a compound event with me and other cards, or is it just me?
right.
Next up, we have Fact Finding Mission. It is a generic action attack. It comes in the cycle. It costs 2 to play. The red attacks for 6 power, and it has 2 defense. This card reads, when this hits a hero, you may look at a face-down card in their arsenal or equipment zones. What we wanted to highlight here was that you may choose to look at a face-down card in the arsenal or equipment zones when the triggered effect resolves on the stack. If you do so, which face-down card you choose to look at in either of those zones is determined when the triggered effect resolves, and not when the triggered effect is added to the stack. So have to wait till you hit, then the trigger gets added to the stack and then resolved, and then you can look at a face down card.
Yeah, this is a lot of times I get questions from players trying to kind of find an edge. They're like, okay, it's like, do you need to pre-select the card in my arsenal, let's say, when you hit me, and then it's a sigil, so hey, your effect fizzles, something like that. But in this case, it's written in such a way that there is no priority window to do so.
Right.
That you do choose on resolution from a valid set of choices here.
All right, next we've got Visit the Golden Anvil. This is a warrior action. It's a blue that costs 0 resources and has 3 defense, and is an Olympia specialization. It says, as an additional cost to play this, destroy X gold you control, equip X weapons and or equipment from your inventory. So this is it's an X value card. So when you play it, you determine what you would like the X value to be. You can choose X to be 0 if you'd like, in which case you destroy 0 gold and you would equip 0 weapons and or equipment from your inventory. You aren't locked into picking so for example, say X is 2. You're not locked into choosing 2 equipment or 2 weapons or 1 of each when you play the card. You decide that when the card resolves, and as you go through the resolution, you end up with some permutation of a total of 2 weapons and or equipment that you equip from them. You can also choose to fail to find to equip from your inventory. Because your inventory is private information, you're allowed to fail to find. Your opponent is not able to look through your inventory to verify, hey, yeah, this player did not have 2 weapons and or equipment. You are also able to look at your inventory at any time if you would like during the game. So you can kind of plan ahead and strategically decide.
Yeah, makes sense. Guess quick quick deck construction rule here. It's still limit 3 for, like, if I want to equip 3 headpieces of the same name, like, it's still constrained by 3 in CC and 2 in Blitz, right?
Correct. Yes. This is a card that I think could make Olympia decks a lot more expensive. No longer do you only need to own 1 Fiendal Spring Tunic.
Yeah. 3 Balance of Justice. Yeah.
I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I really would like Brutes to not hit me, please.
Right?
Next, I have Supercell. It's a mechanologist action. It's a blue, costs X, and has 2 defense. And it says put X steam counters on X target hyperdrivers you control. Create a hyperdriver token with X steam counters. If X is 3 or greater, you may shuffle a construct nitro mechanoid from your banish zone into your deck. So, big thing that really stood out to me is you have to have valid targets to play Supercell for any X that's greater than 0. So, for example, if you only have 2 target hyperdrivers, you can only select X equals 0, 1, or 2. If you attempt to declare X equals 3, you don't have that many targets. So you wouldn't be able to even attempt to play Supercell. The other thing is you can still play X equals 0 for Supercell. You're just going to try to create a hyperdriver with 0 steam counters in the arena because the first line of text reads put 0 steam counters on 0 target hyperdrivers you control. And of course, you wouldn't fulfill the condition of the third line. So basically, what would happen then is the hyperdriver would trigger to destroy it, as it has no steam counters on it. And unless you somehow give it a steam counter with that trigger on the stack, then that hyperdriver would just destroy itself.
There is a cool interaction with this, actually, where if you play it for 0 and have one of the red instant evos that puts hyperdrivers underneath it on resolution, you can play one of those in response to the state-based trigger to destroy this hyperdriver with 0 counters and tuck that 0 counter hyperdriver underneath your evo and still get some benefit from it.
That is cool.
Okay, that answers my question. Thanks.
You can respond to the destroy trigger. That's cool.
Cool. Yeah. Next, we have Long Draw Half Glove, Ranger Equipment Arms, 1 defense, as Battle Worn. And it reads, instant, destroy this, put 2 cards from your hand and or arsenal on the bottom of your deck. Your next arrow attack this turn gets +4 power. And the highlight here is, in addition to destroying the Long Draw Half Glove, the cost to activate this piece of equipment is also putting 2 cards, a total of 2 cards from your hand or arsenal on the bottom of your deck. To fulfill this cost, you can either put 2 cards from your hand or 2 cards from your arsenal or 1 from each zone. And you cannot activate Long Draw Half Glove if you cannot pay the cost.
I think this is pretty cool because it's notably not a non-attack action to activate this, so it's an out to Warmongers for Ranger decks.
Yeah.
It's a way to utilize cards if you play 3 of a kind and have a bunch of extra cards in your hand. You just get to turn 2 cards and your arm into a +4 that you might not be able to play.
Giving some more flexibility to the Ranger class seems pretty good.
And having Battle Worn finally.
Yeah, that seems really huge.
All right, next we've got another Ranger card. This is Murky Water. It's a Ranger Arrow attack action card. It's a red that costs 2 resources and has 6 power and 3 defense. So it's our second pummelable arrow. It's a Riptide specialization, so Shiana can pummel it. And if this has an aim counter, it gets +1 power and dominate. When this hits, you may banish 3 face-down traps from your graveyard. If you do, choose 1 at random and put it in your arsenal. So this is one that's caused a lot of questions about, well, what if I have more than 3 traps? What if I have less than 3 traps? Because the text specifically says you may banish 3 face-down traps and not you may banish up to 3, your options are either banish 0 traps or banish exactly 3 traps.
Hmm.
So you have 1 or 2. If you have 0, 1, or 2, the only option you have of the 2 options is banish 0 and not doing the rest of the effect.
Good to
That
know.
does make sense. I remember all the questions on Discord. It was
Yeah.
That was I remember a long conversation about it.
All right, there is one last card here, Patrick. Finish us off strong here.
All right, this is Enigma New Moon. This is the last hero in the set. I believe it only comes from the golden packs in the boxes. She is a mystic young illusionist hero with 4 intellect and 20 health. She says, equipment you own get cloaked, and has an instant ability that costs 3 chi resources that says, turn target face down equipment you have equipped face up. If it has ward, create 3 spectral shield tokens. So turning the targeted face down equipment you have equipped face up occurs when the activated abilities layer resolves. It is not part of the cost to activate the ability. So if the targeted face down equipment is turned face up before the activated abilities layer begins to resolve in the stack, the layer will fail and you will not get spectral shield tokens because you didn't turn up the equipment as part of the resolution of the ability. If the equipment has an ability that triggers when it is equipped, it does not trigger when it is equipped because it is face down because it is cloaked, and abilities are non-functional while cards are not face up on the stack or in the arena unless they specifically say they are. So the example being Crown of Dominion says when you equip this, create a gold token, but if you equip it face down, that ability isn't active, so you don't create a gold token.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's fascinating that there's some interaction with turning equipment face up. A lot of them that we've described so far today you've flipped them face up as part of the paying the cost, but as you described this time, it's actually on resolution that you turn the face down equipment face up. So just something to keep in mind when you're looking at this card compared to some others. That's it. So that was
What a short episode.
almost 2.5 hours. So it flew by though, and really want to thank you for joining us here, the Judges of Rathe podcast, Patrick. I'd just have a couple questions before we leave, just for any shout outs and also where we can find you if people want to get in touch.
Yeah, totally. I want to shout out first and foremost the Attack Action podcast. They are some of my closest friends in the Flesh and Blood community. Taylor in particular lives about 25 or 30 minutes away from me, so he's someone that I hang out with at Armory all the time, and I do board game nights over at his house, and he's a very good friend of mine. And I'd like to shout out the Spike Feeders. Bill from the Spike Feeders is the person who introduced me to Flesh and Blood, and they do a bunch of really cool Flesh and Blood content. They do a series called the Goliath Gauntlet where they just play some games. They run one of their decks through a quote unquote Goliath Gauntlet to kind of just play Flesh and Blood and have fun. The only place you can really find me is just Discord. I don't have any other social medias. But as stated, my Discord username is McLightning. I'm kind of everywhere. I'm all over the Purple Discord. I'm constantly answering rules questions in the Game Rules channel and chatting in a whole bunch of different hero threads. And I'm always checking the Judge Discord, answering rules questions over there and interacting with folks over there.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again so much. And on behalf of Shay and myself, to anyone that's still listening, thank you. Leave us a comment. And we hope to catch you next time on the Judges of Rathe podcast.